How to love an avoidant man. How many of you have ever felt like you're pouring love into someone, but they keep pulling away? You text, they respond hours later, you try to connect and they shut down. It's frustrating, it's painful. But listen, this is not about you being unworthy of love. This is about understanding the man you're dealing with. If you want to love an avoidant man, you need a strategy, not just emotion, because love is not just a feeling, it's an art. And if you master this, you will unlock a deeper connection than you ever thought possible. Loving an avoidant man starts with a shift in mindset. Most people make the mistake of chasing, thinking that if they just love harder, if they just prove their worth, they'll finally get the connection they crave. But that's not how it works. The more you push, the more he pulls away. It's a dance of energy, and right now, you're stepping on his toes. The key is to stop chasing and start attracting. Attraction isn't about pleading, convincing, or waiting by the phone. It's about stepping into your own power so strongly that he feels the pull toward you instead of the pressure to escape. An avoidant man has learned somewhere along the way that relationships mean losing himself. Maybe he grew up in a home where love felt like control. Maybe he was in a relationship that made him feel suffocated. So when things start getting emotionally intense, his default reaction is to create space, not because he doesn't care, but because closeness triggers an unconscious fear. The problem is, when you see him pulling away, you feel anxious. You feel rejected. And your instinct is to close the gap, to reach out, to demand answers, to make sure he still wants you. But that energy doesn't bring him closer. It reinforces his fear. What you need to do instead is shift from the energy of chasing to the energy of confidence. Imagine two magnets. One is steady, grounded, strong. The other is constantly moving toward it, desperate to connect. What happens? The moving magnet pushes the other one away. But if the first magnet holds its ground, the second one naturally starts to gravitate toward it. This is the dynamic of attraction. You don't pull him in by trying harder. You pull him in by becoming someone he wants to move toward. That starts with emotional self-sufficiency. When you make a man the source of your happiness, he feels the weight of that responsibility, and it overwhelms him. But when you create happiness in your own life, when you build a world so rich, so fulfilling, that he's not your oxygen, but just the icing on the cake, he feels safe. He starts to see you as a place of joy, not pressure. He starts thinking about you, missing you, and wanting to be around you, not because you need him, but because you radiate something powerful and magnetic. This doesn't mean playing games. It's not about pretending to be indifferent or trying to make him jealous. It's about genuinely shifting your focus from how do I make him stay to how do I create a life so incredible that he naturally wants to be part of it. Instead of sitting around waiting for a text, go out and do something that makes you feel alive. Instead of overanalyzing his every action, pour that energy into something that excites you. The moment you stop chasing, you start radiating a different energy, one that's calm, secure, and deeply attractive. When he does come closer, resist the urge to smother him with reassurance, seeking behaviors. Let him come at his own pace. If he reaches out, respond warmly, but don't drop everything for him. If he wants to see you, make sure it fits into your life instead of rearranging your schedule to accommodate him. This balance creates a dynamic where he doesn't feel trapped and you don't feel powerless. It allows the connection to grow naturally instead of being forced. The most beautiful relationships aren't built on fear and pursuit. They're built on two people choosing each other freely without pressure or desperation. The moment you stop chasing and start owning your worth, you become the kind of person he can't help but be drawn to. Not because you're trying to pull him in, but because you become so centered, so radiant, that he feels the pull toward you all on his own. Communication is the foundation of any relationship, but when you're dealing with an avoidant man, traditional approaches won't work. He doesn't respond well to pressure, intensity, or emotional demands. The moment he feels cornered, his instinct is to withdraw. This isn't necessarily because he doesn't care. It's because emotional closeness triggers a deep-seated fear of losing his independence or being overwhelmed. If you want to build a connection with him, you have to communicate in a way that makes him feel safe rather than suffocated. Most people, when they feel a lack of connection, try to fix it by talking more. They initiate deep conversations, ask where the relationship is going, and seek constant reassurance. But to an avoidant man, these conversations often feel like a trap. He perceives them as a demand for something he's not ready to give, even if that's not your intention. The more you press, the more he emotionally shuts down. Instead of getting closer, you push him further away, leaving you frustrated and him feeling even more distant. So, how do you communicate in a way that keeps the connection open without triggering his need for space? First, understand that timing and tone matter more than you think. If you bring up a heavy emotional topic when he's already feeling overwhelmed, he's going to retreat. Instead of confronting him with, "We need to talk," which immediately puts him on the defensive, try something more neutral and inviting. A simple, "Hey, I love spending time with you. I appreciate you," plants a seed of connection without making him feel like he's being backed into a corner. The key is to make your communication feel like an invitation, not a demand. Think of it as opening a door rather than pushing him through it. Avoidant men need to feel like they have control over their emotions and decisions. If they sense that they're being forced into emotional depth, they resist. But if you create a space where they want to open up, they will, on their terms. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by leading with positive reinforcement instead of criticism. If he does something that makes you feel loved, acknowledge it. A simple, "I really loved when you did that," makes him feel safe to do more of it. On the other hand, if he pulls away and you respond with frustration or accusations, it reinforces his belief that relationships are stressful and draining. This doesn't mean you should suppress your feelings. It means delivering them in a way that keeps the emotional door open rather than slamming it shut. Another important aspect is learning to sit with silence. Avoidant men often process emotions internally before they verbalize them. If you bombard him with messages when he's withdrawn, he will see it as pressure. Instead, give him space while maintaining a warm presence. A well-timed "thinking of you, no pressure to respond" can do far more than paragraphs of explanation about why his distance is hurting you. It signals that you respect his need for space while still valuing the connection. Additionally, make sure your communication is balanced. If every conversation is heavy, he will start associating your presence with stress. Inject lightness, humor, and shared experiences into your interactions. The more he feels that being with you is a place of joy rather than obligation, the more he will naturally want to engage. Finally, understand that the way he communicates love may not always be verbal. Avoidant men often express affection through actions rather than words. Instead of fixating on whether he says "I love you" often enough, pay attention to the small ways he shows care. It might be through acts of service, consistency, or simply choosing to spend time with you in his own way. When you acknowledge and appreciate his form of communication rather than expecting him to fit into your style, you create a bridge of understanding rather than a wall of frustration. By shifting the way you communicate, removing pressure, adding warmth, and allowing space, you create an environment where he feels safe to open up instead of feeling the need to escape. And when he feels safe, connection becomes something he desires rather than something he fears. Loving an avoidant man means understanding that his withdrawal is not necessarily a rejection of you, it's a response to his own internal fears. He associates closeness with stress, pressure, or even a loss of freedom. That's why one of the most important things you can do is shift the emotional energy in your relationship from tension to peace. If every interaction feels like a demand, an argument, or a deep emotional excavation, he's going to run. But if your presence feels like a place of ease and comfort, he will be naturally drawn to you.
Most people think love is about constant closeness, deep conversations, and always knowing what the other person is thinking. That might work for some, but an avoidant man doesn't experience connection in the same way. To him, too much emotional intensity can feel suffocating, even if he deeply cares about you. When he senses that a relationship is becoming a source of stress instead of a source of peace, his instinct is to create space. That's why shifting your energy is so crucial. Your presence needs to feel like a sanctuary, not a battlefield. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It means learning to regulate your own emotional state so that your relationship isn't constantly fueled by anxiety, neediness, or frustration. When you get upset, take a step back and ask yourself, am I reacting from a place of fear or am I responding from a place of understanding? Fear-based reactions push him away. Understanding-based responses invite him in. The key is to become a source of peace in a way that is genuine, not performative. If you're constantly trying to be chill just to keep him from leaving, that's not true inner peace, that's suppression, and it will eventually explode. Instead, focus on cultivating your own emotional well-being. Find things that bring you joy outside of the relationship. Build a life that excites you. When you are emotionally fulfilled on your own, you're not looking to him to provide your sense of security, which takes the pressure off the relationship. Avoidant men are incredibly sensitive to emotional energy. If he feels that every conversation is loaded with expectations or that your happiness depends on his behavior, he will retreat. But if he sees that you're capable of being happy and at peace regardless of what he does, he will feel safe around you. That safety is what allows him to slowly lower his walls and start engaging more. Another way to create a sense of peace is to avoid unnecessary conflict. This doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior or avoiding important discussions. It means being mindful of when and how you bring up issues. If every conversation turns into an emotional confrontation, he will associate the relationship with stress. Instead, approach difficult topics with calmness and clarity. Use phrases like, I love being with you and I want to understand you better, rather than, why do you always pull away? One approach invites him in, the other pushes him further into his shell. It's also important to understand that he needs space not as a way of rejecting you, but as a way of regulating his emotions. When he pulls away, your instinct might be to chase, to demand reassurance, or to panic. But if you can hold steady in those moments, allowing him to take his space while maintaining your own sense of self, you become someone he trusts rather than someone he feels he has to escape from. The more you can create a relationship dynamic that feels calm, secure, and accepting, the more he will naturally want to be around you. When love feels like a place of peace rather than pressure, an avoidant man will start to let his guard down, and that's when real intimacy can begin to grow. Loving an avoidant man requires deep emotional intelligence and self-awareness. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is trying to heal their partner's wounds for them. It comes from a good place. You see someone struggling, shutting down, or resisting love, and your instinct is to show them that they are safe, that they are loved, that they don't have to run anymore. But the truth is, no amount of love can heal someone who is not ready to heal themselves. And the moment you take on the role of healer, you set yourself up for exhaustion and disappointment.
Avoidant men often have deep-rooted wounds from their past. Maybe they grew up in a home where emotional closeness was overwhelming, unpredictable, or even non-existent. Maybe they had a relationship where they felt trapped, manipulated, or smothered. Whatever the case, they've learned that intimacy equals loss of control, and their defense mechanism is to pull away. When they start feeling vulnerable, their subconscious tells them, this is dangerous. You need to create distance. It's not that they don't care, it's that they don't yet trust intimacy in the way you do. And the challenge is that when you love an avoidant person, it's tempting to take on their emotional healing as if it's your personal responsibility. You might believe that if you just love them enough, if you show them patience, if you give them everything they've never had, they'll finally feel safe enough to stay. But that's not how healing works. Healing isn't something you can do for someone. It's something they have to choose for themselves. The more you try to fix them, the more they will resist, because deep down, they don't want to feel like a project. The healthiest approach is to understand their wounds without trying to carry them. You can acknowledge that they struggle with intimacy without making it your job to change them. You can offer love and support without losing yourself in the process. The best thing you can do is to hold space for them, meaning you accept where they are without trying to force them into a version of love they aren't ready for. When they pull away, instead of reacting with panic or frustration, you remain steady. When they struggle to express their emotions, instead of demanding more than they can give, you appreciate the small ways they do show their feelings. But there is a fine line between understanding and self-sacrifice. Understanding their wounds does not mean tolerating emotional neglect. It does not mean waiting forever for them to change. It does not mean excusing toxic behaviors. There is a difference between giving someone grace and allowing them to take you for granted. If they are unwilling to work on themselves, unwilling to meet you halfway, unwilling to grow, then no amount of patience will fix that. You have to recognize when your empathy is turning into self-abandonment. The best way to love an avoidant man without losing yourself is to set clear boundaries. Boundaries are not about controlling the other person. They are about protecting your own emotional well-being. It's okay to say, I understand you need space, but I also need consistency. It's okay to say, I respect your feelings, but I also need to feel valued in this relationship. Boundaries ensure that you are not endlessly pouring love into someone who is unwilling or unable to reciprocate. At the end of the day, love is a two-way street. You can be understanding, but you also deserve to be loved in a way that feels fulfilling to you. When you stop trying to heal him and start focusing on your own emotional needs, one of two things will happen. Either he will recognize what he has and step up, or he will continue his avoidant patterns, and you will realize that you deserve more. Either way, you win, because you are no longer making your happiness dependent on someone else's wounds. Loving an avoidant man can be emotionally draining if you are not careful about maintaining your own sense of self. It is easy to get so caught up in trying to make the relationship work that you slowly start losing sight of who you are outside of it. You begin adjusting your needs, your desires, even your personality to fit his comfort zone. You start making excuses for his emotional distance, telling yourself that if you are just more patient, more understanding, more accommodating, he will finally feel safe enough to fully commit. But in the process, you risk losing the very essence of what makes you powerful, confident, and attractive in the first place. One of the most dangerous traps in loving an avoidant man is basing your self-worth on his level of engagement. When he pulls away, you might find yourself feeling anxious, questioning what you did wrong, and trying to adjust yourself to bring him back. You might text less, talk less, or become overly agreeable just to avoid pushing him further away. But the moment you start suppressing your needs and desires just to keep him close, you are no longer in a healthy relationship. You are in a cycle of self-abandonment. And the truth is, no deep, fulfilling love can be built on a foundation where one person is shrinking themselves to keep the other comfortable. Avoidant men are naturally drawn to people who are confident and self-sufficient. They do not respond well to pressure or emotional dependency, but they are intrigued by those who have their own passions, goals, and independent lives. This means that the best thing you can do, not just for the relationship but for yourself, is to stay deeply connected to who you are outside of him. Do not stop prioritizing your friends, your career, your hobbies, or your personal growth. Keep building a life that excites you so that your happiness is never fully dependent on what he does or doesn't do. When you maintain your sense of self, you automatically create a dynamic where you are no longer chasing him, you are simply living your life, and he has the option to meet you where you are. This is powerful because it removes desperation from the equation. You are no longer constantly trying to figure out how to keep him engaged. Instead, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts him because you are radiating confidence and fulfillment. An avoidant man may fear intimacy, but he will always be intrigued by someone who exudes self-assurance and emotional balance. This also means setting clear emotional boundaries. Just because he struggles with closeness does not mean you should accept emotional neglect. You have every right to express your needs and expect to be treated with love, respect, and consistency. If he cannot meet you there, it is not your job to keep adjusting yourself until he does. Love is about mutual effort, and if you are the only one doing the work, then it is not love, it is emotional labor. There will be times when he pulls away, and your instinct might be to overanalyze, to seek reassurance, or to try to close the gap as quickly as possible. But instead of reacting to his distance, shift your focus back to yourself. What do you need? What makes you feel fulfilled? Where in your life can you pour your energy that has nothing to do with him? The more you prioritize your own joy, the more secure you will feel, regardless of his action. And ironically, when you stop trying to hold on to him so tightly, he will likely feel safer coming closer. At the end of the day, the most powerful thing you can do is be a woman who knows her worth. You deserve a relationship where you are loved, valued, and appreciated without having to constantly prove yourself. If he is capable of stepping up and meeting you there, then the relationship has the potential to grow. But if he continues to stay distant despite your best efforts, then the healthiest choice you can make is to walk away, not because you don't love him, but because you refuse to lose yourself in the process of trying to keep him. Patience and consistency are essential when loving an avoided man, but they must be balanced with self-respect and personal boundaries. An avoided man does not open up overnight. His instinct to pull away is not something he can easily turn off, even when he cares deeply about someone. The process of developing trust and emotional intimacy with him takes time, and if you expect rapid change, you are likely to feel disappointed and frustrated. This is where patience becomes key. You must understand that his avoidance is not necessarily a reflection of his feelings for you, but rather a deeply ingrained pattern that requires steady, consistent reassurance. However, patience does not mean waiting indefinitely or accepting emotional neglect. It does not mean putting yourself in a position where you are constantly chasing him, trying to prove your worth, or tolerating behavior that makes you feel unloved or unappreciated. True patience is about giving space for growth while maintaining your own self-worth. It's about allowing him to move at his own pace without sacrificing your own needs in the process. Consistency is equally important. Avoidant men are highly sensitive to emotional shifts. If you react dramatically to every withdrawal, if you punish him with silence or emotional outbursts, it reinforces his belief that relationships are unstable and overwhelming. On the other hand, if you remain steady, if you show him that you are reliable, supportive, and not easily shaken by his moments of distance, he will start to feel safer with you. Over time, this consistency allows him to relax his defenses and begin to trust the connection. This does not mean that you should accept breadcrumbs or allow him to dictate all the terms of the relationship. Being consistent does not mean being passive. It means showing up in a way that is emotionally mature, steady, and secure. It means communicating your needs in a calm and clear way rather than reacting out of fear or frustration. It means setting boundaries and sticking to them, even when it's difficult. If you say, "I need more consistency in communication," but continue to tolerate days of silence, then your words lose their power. Consistency applies not only to how you show up for him, but also to how you show up for yourself. One of the biggest mistakes people make when loving an avoidant man is trying to rush the process. They expect that if they show enough love, enough patience, and enough reassurance, he will suddenly transform into someone who is fully emotionally available. But healing attachment wounds is not an overnight process. It takes time for an avoidant man to unlearn his fear of closeness. If you push too hard too soon, he will retreat even further. The best approach is to remain steady while allowing him to come toward you at his own pace. At the same time, you must be aware of the difference between slow progress and no progress. If months go by and nothing changes, if he is still as distant as he was in the beginning, if he continues to avoid emotional depth, if he refuses to communicate or meet you halfway, then patience is no longer the answer. In that case, you must ask yourself whether the relationship is truly fulfilling or whether you are simply holding on to the hope that one day he will change. At the core of every relationship is a simple truth. Love should feel safe, fulfilling, and mutual. Loving an avoidant man is not about fixing him, waiting endlessly, or proving your worth. It's about understanding his patterns while honoring your own needs. True love is not built on chasing someone who keeps running, nor is it sustained by constantly suppressing your desires to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Instead, it thrives in a space where both partners can grow, trust, and meet each other halfway. If you are in love with an avoidant man, remember this: your patience and understanding are gifts, but they should never come at the cost of your self-respect. Be the source of peace, but not at the expense of your own happiness. Hold space for his growth, but do not lose yourself in the process. Stay rooted in your worth, knowing that the right love will never require you to abandon yourself. And if he is capable of meeting you there, if he is willing to take the steps to try to open up despite his fears, then that is where healing happens, where intimacy deepens, and where love transforms from a struggle into something truly beautiful. But if he is not, then let go with grace, knowing that love is not about convincing someone to stay. It's about finding someone who chooses to, willingly and fully. Thank you for being here today, for showing up for yourself, and for seeking the kind of love that is worthy of you. Remember, you deserve a love that feels like home, not like a test of endurance. Keep your heart open, your boundaries strong, and your standards high, because when you do, the right person, one who is ready, willing, and capable of loving you fully, will step forward. Thank you.